All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Penn State Turf Club. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, my name is Kyle Masters, and I am the president of the Penn State Turfgrass Club. And I will let the other advisors and officers introduce themselves as well.
I'm Peyton Quistad, and I'm the vice president.
I'm Nate Shell, and I'm the treasurer.
I'm Hunter King, and I'm the secretary.
I'm Nate Moore, and I'm in charge of all the social media accounts.
Dr. McGraw, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. Ben McGraw. I'm one of the co-advisors of the Turf Club.
Awesome. Thank you guys for all tuning in tonight. Just wanted to say thank you guys for doing the pre-order sale and everybody who participated in that. That was awesome. It was a huge success. And this would not be possible without you guys to do that. But tonight we have a very special guest, George Peters, supervisor of grounds here at Penn State University. And George will be talking about some of the challenges and adaptations throughout the 2020 athletic year here at Penn State. So welcome, George, to the Penn State Turf Club, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kyle. Sorry, having a little technical difficulties there, getting back to what I needed. Appreciate the introduction. I will get into this in just a second if I can get back to my slideshow. All right, so as Kyle said, I'm going to talk to you tonight about the year full of changes and the adaptations that led to within Penn State intercollegiate athletics as it pertains to our world. A little bit about myself to start out. So I am a State College native, grew up here in the area, and I attended Penn State University, studied turfgrass science, graduated here in 2011 with a BS in turfgrass science. And I also earned an environmental soil science minor while I was here. I took a semester off to do an NFL internship with the Philadelphia Eagles, and because of that, I wound up with an extra semester that I needed some extra courses to fill. And as some of you are probably learning, and I hope that you continue to learn, the soil that you grow the grass upon is the most important part of the environment at the end of the day. So a lot of good stuff there to be had. Pretty good soil program here. So quick little plug there for them. Upon graduating in 2011, I moved into professional sports. My goal while I was a student was to become a head groundskeeper at a Major League Baseball field or an NFL stadium. I took a job as the assistant groundskeeper for the Indianapolis Indians, AAA affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates. I was there for just a little over a year, so I was there for a full season. Started out there while the city of Indianapolis was hosting the Super Bowl. So we had a large tent built in the outfield with a beach built in Indianapolis, Indiana, so that we could host the DirecTV Celebrity Beach Bowl and a Katy Perry concert and the the New England Patriots loss party. It was supposed to be a victory party. We were their location, so hosted that party and then tore that down, resodded the outfield, played a season, and then I was fortunate enough, pretty much by complete happenstance within the same organization, the position opened up with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I was one of the field maintenance supervisors there from 2013 through 2014. So the structure there was a director of field maintenance, and there was 3 of us that were supervisors that were the full-time day-to-day staff, managed the part-time night crew and some of the full-time union crew that helped maintain the field and the facility. After that, I went to Oklahoma State University in January of 2015, and I stayed there until I moved back here to Penn State. So Oklahoma State, a little bit of a shift in gears. I moved there largely because of a fortunate connection from an internship that I had done. I got to know a group of people that are all pretty interconnected, and the job at Oklahoma State University was largely due to their success as a baseball school, and we're on the precipice of building a $60 million baseball stadium, and I wanted to be a part of that. Unfortunately, the wheels at large universities move very slowly, so that project hadn't even broken ground by the time that I left. After being there for almost 4 years, it was still just a dream. However, it did open up recently, so I've been enviously oohing and ahhing over that. But at Oklahoma State, like I said, the baseball was the primary. It's where our shop was based out of, but we maintained about 20 acres total of varsity fields and the landscaping around them. Then in summer of 2018, I came back to Penn State as a supervisor of grounds, and I'll give you a little bit of a rundown about the Beaver Stadium grounds crew. So here at the Beaver Stadium grounds crew, as many of you probably know, take care of Beaver Stadium as our flagship. My assistant supervisor, some of you may know, another Penn State Turf alum, Thomas Goyne. Then there are 8 full-time groundskeepers and a mechanic that are on our staff. They are union employees, tech service employees in the bargaining unit here at Penn State. Then we also rely very heavily upon student labor. So anywhere from 15 to 25 student workers and full-time wage payroll, as we call them, throughout the summer in a normal year that are our workhorses. During a semester, we have anywhere from, it's really more like 15 to 20, 25 happens every once in a while, but pretty rare. So that crew maintains the varsity fields, which is encompasses 15 acres of what I would call what we could equate to greens. That's everything that's mowed with reel mowers. So that's Beaver Stadium, Jeffrey Field, our soccer game stadium, the 6-acre practice fields that we have there for soccer as well. We have 5.5 acres of practice football fields, and we've got a softball field, and we have our own sod nursery. Our fairway cut, if you will, would be our intramural fields, as well as our track field that is a varsity complex, but is maintained the same as the rest of our intramural fields. So that's roughly 40 acres. We also take care of 75 acres year round of football tailgate parking. And then from July until April or May, we take on an additional 125 acres that we help maintain. Now, most of the mowing is delegated out, farmed out to the office of the physical plant, and they do the mowing. We just paint the lines for football season and maintain any signs, parking blocks, etc. Make sure that they're good to go for that. And then we also have 6 synthetic turf surfaces that run about 12 acres. Now, I have the intramural fields in there, and then in those the synthetic turf surfaces, some of those are not intercollegiate athletics owned facilities. So a few years ago, intercollegiate athletics split with campus rec. So it all used to be under one umbrella. So club sports, intramural sports, all of that programming all used to fall under the intercollegiate athletics umbrella. The campus recreation department is now part of student affairs, hence why that is part of your tuition now. But because it would be an immense cost for that department to start their own grounds crew to get it off of the ground, they just contribute to our budget, and we maintain those facilities for them. So that's what a large part of that looks like. It does, because we do take care of some shared use spaces, if you will. Our spring sports season. So let me minimize this here real quick. So Up there in the top right, you can see the softball field. That was taken on the day that our home softball opener was supposed to be on March 18th. Unfortunately for us, the start of this spring was a pretty bumpy ride. As you all know, during spring break on March 9th, it was announced that the university was going to be moving to remote instruction. And then a few days later, on the 12th, seasons were canceled. So as you can see, we had foul lines painted there already. We were moving in the direction of hosting our first game, and that was quickly the rug was quickly pulled out from underneath us. On the 18th of March, on that day, we were set to host our first softball game. We actually also moved into remote work. So everybody within the university was urged to work from home if possible. That began a bit of a roller coaster for us in the field maintenance building because, as I mentioned, our groundskeepers and our mechanic are tech service employees. So they don't have work to do from home, unfortunately. So the first day that they stayed home on the 18th, that was kind of a joint decision between myself and my boss, based upon the Department of Health orders. We asked our staff to stay home on the 18th, and then they actually came back to work for 2 days after that because we were deemed essential. So we needed to continue working. And then we went back to remote work the following Monday. We did a little dance back and forth for a little bit while we defined essential. So what we did was I spent a lot of time working with my boss and the Human Resources Department and Labor and Employee Relations to define what an essential employee is. So it gets very, very sticky with the university because of job classifications, essential workers, if you will. So today is a great example. There was a campus closure from 10 p.m. last night until 9 a.m. this morning, and only essential staff are supposed to be doing work on campus at that time in an effort to keep the campus clear to allow people to safely travel or work and for the physical plant to get the parking lots cleared. In a similar scenario to that, essential workers only are supposed to be in there. Our staff are technically not essential in that definition. We can be deemed essential in support of an event, but if we don't have a game that day or other reasons to make an immediate push, we heed the safety warnings from the university and sit out until campus opens back up. However, because we maintain assets for the university, most of which are living, that becomes a little bit of a slippery slope. And we had some foresight to know that we didn't want to just sit out knowing that things would get immensely out of control, and any cost savings that we had by shutting things down and not running equipment, trying to save on fuel, lower our overhead costs at the end of the day would come back and cost us more to get things back into shape. So we did a lot of work on the front end to explain what we do in our department and why our guys are important to the university and why they may not be listed as essential. The term mission critical became what we used to define the work that we were doing. So we moved into April, here before we move on, actually, is part of that essential and mission critical work. One of the things that our staff, one of our first adaptations, if you will, unfortunately, is the only picture that I seem to have snapped. A couple of our guys got involved at Pagula Ice Arena with another another recent turf alum, Jonathan Kaschek, that we were enlisted and our equipment was enlisted to remove the ice from both the varsity and the community rinks in order to cut down on cost. We used equipment that intercollegiate athletics already owned instead of renting it, and we used our labor to get that done. And we saved an immense amount of money by lowering our utility costs at Pagula Ice Arena by not trying to cool those ice sheets throughout the summer. So that was the end of March. And then moving into April, we were able to come to an agreement with Human Resources that I would use my discretion to schedule our staff, and they would come in as needed. And we would never work more than 4 people at a time from that tech service list. So we would never bring in more than half of our groundskeepers in a single day. And, you know, we rotated through. Fortunately, we had a stroke of luck with weather. The month of March, as you can see, honestly, that picture of softball is probably the greenest that I have ever seen that for what should have been a home opener. Usually, you know, the weather's atrocious, and it looks like the intramural field there behind it, where it's still got a yellow cast to it, and it's just waking up. So we had an early spring warm up, and we some of it's luck, to be perfectly honest. We were scheduled during the week of spring break. We were set to start making our spring green up fertilizer applications, and we stopped that. We pumped the brakes on that until we could develop a plan to move forward. So from there, you know, fortunately the weather cooled down a little bit, and we didn't have grass growing out of our ears. So the month of April, we had to get a little bit creative, and one of the first things that we did because of those labor reductions was roll out plant growth regulator applications on fields that we traditionally have never sprayed with PGRs. The picture there on the right is at our track complex. This is actually taken in late June. I took this picture to showcase a bad quality of cut on there, but it illustrates very well what this facility looks like, how quickly it grows, and what things would have looked like without those PGRs. Because by this time in June, we were well grown out of our Trinexapac ethyl applications. So we mixed and matched depending upon the facility. Most of our varsity facilities traditionally get a Trinexapac ethyl and Ethifon tank mix in the spring for poet seed head suppression. So that's something that we continued to do, but we also mixed in some of our other fields some fluoprimidol and some paclobutrazol to mix in some different GA inhibitors, so that we had, you know, a little bit of variety out there, and essentially at the end of the day, it came down to cost. Going wall to wall with Primo out of a link pack gets a little expensive, so we got a little bit creative with our purchasing, and we tried out a few different things on some of our different complexes. As I said, the picture here is showing a quality of cut issue. So one of the other things that we did was we took the mower that we usually mow those 75 acres of parking lots with, and we dropped the height of cut on that from 3.5 inches to 3 inches. And we took our 4500s that we typically mow the intramural fields with, and we raised them from 2 inches to 3 inches so that those matched, and we could mix and match those mowers based upon our labor. And then we brought back an old mower out of retirement, and we used that in the parking lots as needed, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But that 5910, that wide area mower, it's a ride-on batwing mower. So the quality of cut on that is not what we typically would expect or desire on those fields. However, because of our shorted labor, in the month of April, we were only coming in, as I said, on an as-needed basis. So we had to get creative. Typically, in the month of April, we have 3 students on those Toro 4500 mowers. we have those things running 3 or 4 days a week. So you're running out 3 guys for pretty much a full 8 hours. We'll call it 7. So there's 21 man hours in a given day, and you do that 3 days a week. So you're talking 63 man hours, give or take some fluff. We'll just call it 60, just for the sake of round numbers. Whereas with that wide area mower, we were able to mow that same amount of area with about 10 man hours. So we were only cutting it once a week, thanks to the PGR applications. So that was huge. That saved us a ton of money on labor. That was a big change for us to be able to adapt and overcome that challenge. Moving into May, excuse me, I forgot to tell you the 15 to 30% of normal I have there. I left that out. That's our man hours. So that's 15 to 30% of what we would normally be working during the month of April. That's the number of hours that we worked. Moved into May, we moved back into our full-time staff working every day. Still no part-time staff. So it was about 30 or 40% of our usual man hours that we have there. With a lot of poking and prodding, we were able to purchase our top dressing sand as usual. It's a pretty hefty cost, so that was something that took a lot of work to get done in a year that we were unsure of where our financials were going to be. So we impressed upon the necessary powers that the cultivation practices that we live and die by were mission critical. So we moved forward with our aerification. A little bit about that. Because of the usual spring season and the fall season that we have and how much we support, we only do a hollow tine aerification one time a year. And it's followed with a heavy top dressing of sand, depending upon the field and the conditions. Most of the varsity fields will get verticut prior to the hollow tine aerification. So without our part-time staff, that was an immense undertaking. We started that about a week later than usual. So that was a little bit difficult to get through, but we got through it. Just kind of called on our full-time staff to do some things that they may not normally do. So that kind of use some cliches here. We had to roll with the punches, if you will. This shot here of Beaver Stadium in the background is from the date that blue-white game was supposed to be played. So as you can see, this is about the 3rd week of April. Typically, after that blue-white game, after our spring scrimmage, we tear out with our aerification down at practice football, so we get that done. And my birthday's at the end of April, so my goal every year is to have Beaver Stadium aerated and top dressed by my birthday for my birthday present. Unfortunately, we were a week late on that, so this is again just a little snapshot of what we were looking like in this early spring. So you can see we have some wear and tear there underneath where the sideline mats go. We had a growth blanket out in the south end. It's a super high traffic area from team entry and the band marching onto the field. So because of the lack of a spring game and our normal ramp up, we were pretty lean on fertilizer at that point. We still had some pretty good spring color. To date, the time that this picture was taken, I think the stadium had just received a week prior, had just received its first application of fertilizer for the year. So coming out pretty strong there. In the month of June, we were back to roughly 40 to 50% of our normal man hours. We worked with the Department of Dairy and Animal Science, who owns a lot of the pasture and the rest of the 125 acres of parking lot that I referenced. We worked with them and Penn State Farm Ops to surrender our parking lots that we we decided not to mow. We turned them into hayfields. As you can see there, that's normally a tailgating lot right in the shadow of Beaver Stadium. We worked with them and allowed them to make that hay off of that. We helped split that cost with the College of Ag, and the Beef Sheep Center was able to get. They were able to get about 100 round bales out of all of that acreage that normally we just mow a couple times a week and get ready for parking. So that was a nice joint effort to try to, again, get creative and adapt to a year with low labor. So that was our big highlight of the month of June, in my opinion. At that point, we were moving into a drought, so the months of July and August were the driest on record since 1895. So again, we had to get a little bit creative with that. So we busted out some water wheels, some old school irrigation techniques that hadn't been done in a few years. And a little picture here. This is from a campaign ad actually from last fall. As you can see there, a lot of brown in that picture. You can see the stuff, the varsity fields that are irrigated, and there to the left of Beaver Stadium, there's a good chunk of that parking lot that's nice and green. This picture was from late August, around the time of when our first home game would have been. But on August 5th, we were moving forward with plans for a 10-game conference-only football season. We were going crazy trying to figure out how we were going to juggle all of the tailgating requests that we were going to have, what we were going to do for football parking, how many fans we were going to be able to have in the stands. And 6 days later, the Big Ten backed out and said that we're not going to do it. And then about a month later, we started it back up. So we had a little bit of a heads up that was coming, but to kick that back in, it was just a lot of up and down. So whenever we were put on that hold again there on August 11th, all fall sports were canceled. There was a lot of uncertainty as far as what was going to happen with all of the athletes, whether they're going to be allowed to stay on campus, whether the campus was going to, as you guys know, we had largely remote learning. So there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of uncertainty. Fortunately, whenever that new 8-game schedule came out, we were set to have our first game on Halloween. So that was quite the whirlwind month. Looking back at that now, that seems like a lot of time from the time that we released the first schedule until we finally played our first home game. But in all honesty, that was like a little blip in my mind. It went by so fast I can hardly fathom it. We moved into that. There in the background is Jeffrey Field. Shortly after the announcement, this is early September, so we would have been playing some soccer in a normal year. So some more of the changes and adaptations that we had to take on for the fall semester. Because we were one of the only work units on campus in the month of in the month of April, we became the de facto supply acquisition and distribution team. So our full-time staff was constantly unloading pallets of hand sanitizer or face masks or air purification units. Pallets and pallets of vital oxide are cleaner of choice. I try not to use brand names in that, but it is what it is there. So we got through all of that distribution to the rest of the department. It was a lot for our guys to take on. Our students as well were able to return in a lighter capacity than usual. So that took a lot from them to instead of just going out and doing what we usually do, taking care of the grass and a little bit of the facilities. We were a largely facilities-based operation, with no indoor spaces being allowed to have more than 25 people. That created a challenge. So as you can see in the background of that picture, there's a tent next to the bleachers. That was our meeting space for our soccer teams. We had another tent underneath the bleachers. We had similar setups across campus to try to deal with the fact that we couldn't meet, our teams couldn't meet in groups of more than 25 people. So we had to have some semi-open air spaces to provide that ventilation. That brought a whole nother host of problems once the weather started getting cold and we needed to heat them. Again, that fortunately or unfortunately, however you choose to look at it, that fell to us to figure out how to skin that cat. So that was a lot that hinged on our operation. That really kind of speaks to something that I think Kyle and Nate can probably confirm from our full-time staff. Those 8 groundskeepers that we have are very, very good at their jobs, are very passionate about what they do. And the fact that those guys are so good at their job allows myself and Thomas, allows us the ability to let them hit the ground running with what they need to do. And we can get into the weeds on all the crazy requests, and we're just kind of the GPS guidance system for the supercar that is the Beaver Stadium grounds crew. So a little bit of a lesson to take away from that as you guys move on after your collegiate career, moving into management. Build your bench. That really is the moral of the story that I would say is the most prevalent from all of this. Is the only reason that we were able to accomplish everything that we did was be in large thanks to my predecessors that did a lot of fighting uphill battles over the years to supplement our staff with new hires and get ourselves to the point to where we could do the bare minimum. As I said, mowing, making all of our necessary PGR apps, keeping up with our fungicide applications, keeping up with our fertility, and keeping the grass alive. It was really a no frills operation, but at the end of the day, we accomplished the mission of keeping the grass alive. And then we were still able to do all these extracurriculars to pitch in on the facility standpoint. The football season was a challenging one. Again, the start of the fall semester, not having a plan for a football season. When you take a bunch of coaches that are and athletes that are very competitive, and you take away their competition, all that leaves is practices. In a normal year, whether it's football, whether it's soccer, whether it's softball, whenever we travel, teams go on the road for a week or a couple of days, there's some downtime on the field. We can get out there, we can resod a goal mouth at soccer, or we can do some plugging on the practice football fields. We can go out, we can seed, we can needle tine. If we need to, we can go up and we can do a light top dressing at the stadium in between games. Moving through the month of July and August, when it was uncertain as to whether we were going to have a football season, we had 9 football practices in Beaver Stadium this year. Typically, we have 3, maybe 4 practices with a walkthrough, and most of those are a true scrimmage. Whereas this year, we had one true scrimmage and 1 walkthrough. The other 7 practices were just that. They were practices just like they would be on the 2 practice fields that we have, where there's a lot of drill work, a lot of repetitive action, getting the team and the players to understand the importance of moving around. Very difficult to do. So it brings its own host of challenges. as some of you may be familiar with the construction of Beaver Stadium, we have a huge video board on the south end now, and that has completely changed the way that we have to manage that field, because a lot of stadiums historically were built with an open south end that allows for maximum sun exposure across the entirety of the field. With the addition of that south deck and that scoreboard, once we get into the fall, so from about mid-October on, that south end from the 20-yard line to the end zone only gets a few hours of sun a day, and then by the end of season in a typical year, that end zone may only get about an hour and a half to 2 hours of sun a day if it's sunny that time of year. And unfortunately, that's where a large majority of that practice takes place, due to all of the equipment that goes up there for them to be able to practice. So our staff were tasked with getting that back from essentially being an additional practice field to being game ready for for October 31st. And that called for the use of growth blankets more than ever before. So we got that thing filled back in with the use of some ryegrass and some growth blankets, and we were ready to roll. And then we played the two latest games in Beaver Stadium history on December 12th and December 19th. As most of you are aware, and a couple of you were involved in, we got 13 inches of snow a couple of days before that game. So that was an immense challenge. That game that was played on the 19th, I found out at 9:30 a.m. on December 13th that we would be playing a game on the 19th. So we quickly moved into action, and we put the tarp on the field, or tarps, I should say. We have 4 large tarps that cover Beaver Stadium from goalpost to goalpost, and that allows us to plow that field off with you see orange and yellow snow pushers that are used in parking lots. They have a thick rubber blade on the bottom of them. We use those pusher boxes, and then we take a vinyl fence topper, what you would see on top of like your high school baseball field that has a chain link outfield fence. It's got a vinyl fence topper on there so that you're not gouging your arm whenever you reach out for a ball. We take something similar to that and put it over top of that rubber so that it glides on top of that tarp. We put those tarps out on Sunday, the 13th, in the afternoon. We came in on Monday morning, and we had about an inch of slush. And unfortunately, not quite the consistency that we can use those pushers to push that stuff off. So we had to squeegee it off by hand, and dump those tarps with the help of the Office of the Physical Plant. Got that stuff taken care of, uncovered the field, and the crew went to work that afternoon. They painted the field in about 4 hours from start to finish. They were able to get the entire layout done with a special paint that cures faster than a traditional latex-based grass paint that we use. And then we covered that field back up the next day, Tuesday afternoon. We put the tarp on, and it started snowing then on Wednesday. Our staff worked from about 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. There was 3 to 4 inches of snow had accumulated on the tarp at that point. They started pushing that snow off to the south end of the stadium. And then all of that snow gets hauled out, dumped in a parking lot below our baseball stadium. And then from there, we ran that same operation until about 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday night. And we got back up on December 17th. And all told, there's about 13 inches of snow that had fallen. We had cleared 8 to 9 inches off of most of the tarp by the time that we hung it up at 10 o'clock. So we still had a few inches hanging out on the better part of the tarp. We finished pushing that out, and then we got help from some of our students that are pictured here, and also we enlisted the help of some of our other tech service employees throughout the athletic department that are traditionally the equipment managers for the team. So they're the ones that do the laundry, fix the pads, all that fun stuff for all 31 of our varsity athletic programs. They're all in the same union as our guys, so they were able to come up and do that work with them. So that was quite the undertaking. True team effort, and again, goes back to that thing that I talked about, building your bench, having a relationship with your coworkers and your peers within the department to be able to lean on them when you need the help. We got into doing a lot of stuff for other people that, frankly, is not necessarily in our purview, but is, as we are told all the time, being good teammates. It paid off because those same people that we were helping out bailed us out. So, that it just goes to show the strength not only of our team directly in our field maintenance building, but as a department, and the sacrifices that those people made on behalf of Penn State football was pretty impressive. So, with that, that's the majority of the quick rundown for you. About 45 minutes in. I'll kick it to Kyle to see if anybody wants to ask any questions.
If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask George a question, or put it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. We'll keep it up for a little bit. George, I had a question.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about different scenarios, but kind of going throughout the spring to the fall, and with all these, with all the Big Ten changes as far as, if we're going to play certain sports seasons, was there how much of did the coaches for each of these athletic teams were involved with kind of making this possible to have a football season, from not having a football season to going to have a football season, or being able to bring spring sports back, hopefully in the future and stuff
So a lot of that, unfortunately, some of that got really involved in, got a little bit politicized, and there were some other teams within the conference that were very vocal, and some coaches that were very vocal. I mean, even our football coach was pretty vocal about his displeasure with the decisions that were being made. And to answer, I think where you were getting at, the coaches, much to their chagrin, did not have as much influence as they would have liked. Most of those decisions were largely driven by our sports medicine department, and the research. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's consultants, lawyers, and doctors that work with the Big Ten to make those decisions and determine the risk, and comes down to revenue at the end of the day, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. And became a risk reward equation. And speaking to the spring sports, so the fall sports the rest of the fall sports were canceled for the fall, and the NCAA has granted the exception for those sports to be competitive in the spring. So this spring we will have the other 30 teams, other than football, competing in NCAA competitions. Most of those will be conference only, but some of our sports don't have a traditional Big Ten membership, like our lacrosse programs, our hockey programs are kind of a mixed bag there. They belong to different conferences in order to be able to be more competitive and have some more teams in that. But all of those teams, we're working through all of those schedules right now. That those are kind of being released every day we get a new schedule. Today we got the field hockey schedule and we got the tennis schedules. So those sports are working to come back, and now we just have to rely upon again, like I said, our sports med programs to guide us through and make sure that we're doing our best to follow all the necessary protocols.
Thank you.
I have a question, George. Were there any changes or adaptations that you made, such as like adding PGRs to places that you normally don't, or changing the mowers to different height settings, or physically changing the mower that you use, that you think you're gonna keep from here moving forward? Or do you think you're gonna revert back to the same practices you had, say, like a year or two ago?
Certain things we will revert back to if necessary, and if it is a better way to do it. There's some things that we will keep around. Some of the PGR applications, I don't know that we'll ever consistently keep the intramural fields under a PGR, just because of the amount of wear and tear that we get on those. It is handy, and at the end of the day, it may come down to, again, what I said, it all comes down to revenue. At the end of the day, it actually may make more sense for us to keep that around. I haven't done the math on that yet to kick the tires on whether we want to do that every year. We would probably run it out at a lower rate. And we were pretty light anyways, but maybe something that we do. One of the areas that we will probably keep that primo around on, that we traditionally have not, would be Beaver Stadium. That's something that we have not historically done. It's been done a time or two in the past up there. It's not something that we've ever really mixed into the works up there. Between my predecessor Herb and his predecessor Bob, that was something that not necessarily that Bob didn't believe in, because he certainly used it at other fields, but it was more so that he was nervous about doing so at the stadium, and Herb didn't really try to mess with his recipe too much. But we kind of proved this year that sometimes you gotta mess with the recipe, and sometimes that's all right. So that one will probably stick around. And honestly, I think the height of cut may be a little bit of a, I don't know that we're going to keep things at 3 inches. This year it's hard to say, because we don't know what 2021 is going to bring for us. We don't know what kind of intramural programming there may be later in the year. We don't know what the summer is going to be, but let's just say when we go back to normal, and not use 2021, whenever that may be, or we're back to those fields being used more regularly. I have definitely thought about maybe bumping that height of cut up to maybe meet in the middle, and bumping it to 2.5 instead of 2, and seeing what that does for us from a wear and tear standpoint, and whether that helps us out with maintaining a little bit more ground cover. We have done some thinking and are working through a trial on a fertilizer that we use, looking at a new product for us that is a different mixture of nitrogen sources that may provide for a more steady feed. So one of the things that we did this year, honestly, in preparation, early on in the discussions of when there was going to be a season, there was a time where we thought we were going to be playing football in the spring. We thought that there was a chance that we'd be playing our first home game in January. So we did a lot of digging around, and we unearthed an old friend of ours here at the Beaver Stadium grounds crew, and we found a fertilizer product with IBDU, isobutylene diurea, as the nitrogen source. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it is a traditional slow release product that is hard to come by now because it's not manufactured in the same way that it used to be. It's a byproduct for another manufacturing process that is not traditionally done in the United States anymore. So there's a place in Canada that's still making it. It's pretty cost prohibitive. So that used to be what Bob spread everywhere. That was his go-to. We unearthed that from a supplier, and we wanted to use that for better winter color and earlier spring green up. So that's, because of the way that the nitrogen is released and becomes plant available due to the water in your soil, that allows that to not get the traditional roller coaster of nitrogen release and growth, and you get a little bit more of a steady feed. And traditionally, that's something that you see a better spring green up from. So we were looking for that. We like that product. It worked out really well in the fall, and I'm hoping that we see that spring green up. And if that's the case, we'll probably keep that around. Some of the things that we saw with our full-time staff that we'll keep around is mixing things up a little bit more. So as you know, Nate, we had our fair share of close calls. Some of our staff members were tested positive with COVID throughout the year, and we had to put some people in some roles that they normally wouldn't. So kind of got me out of my comfort zone from always having the same people do the same things. So that's something that I'll probably keep the same, is not always keeping it the same.
Hey, George. Anthony Petrolis here. Did you have any, I know with the limited manpower, your cost of the job sites and everything were drastically reduced. Is that going to inhibit your budget for the following on years and fighting for that budget, or are they keeping y'all's budget the same?
Well, we're actually working through that right now, Anthony. So I don't have a solid answer for you, but I can speak to that a little bit. So our financial year, our fiscal year, if you will, runs at the university runs from July 1st to June 30th, as opposed to January 1 through December 31. So we, in January, and every year we typically are moving through our budgetary planning, and we do our budget presentations in February. So we made our budget presentation last year, and then about 3 weeks after we were approved, all of the COVID changes occurred, and we started pinching pennies. We didn't do a lot of capital expenditures. We shut down a lot of projects, and our 2019 to 2020 fiscal year, we came in. We saved about 40% of our budget. So if you think about that, that's a pretty hefty savings that we put back into the department. But most of that is done with the understanding that some of those things were not savings that will be able to be seen every year. Some of those are, those savings are simply deferred expenses, replacing pieces of equipment or buying new pieces of equipment that we need. A large part of that was labor reduction. We didn't have any students on the books from March until June. So between what our student line would be and the overtime that our full-time staff would work, we kicked back. I mean, that was about 10% of our budget that we kicked back in. We saved close to $100,000 in labor expenses alone. So, that's one that, fortunately, like I said, it was pretty much a no frills year, and that was noticed. And I think that's something that's important to be noted. It was very evident around campus and within the department that our operation was not accomplishing the same things that they normally did. Things were not up to our standard, so that helps us out in that front. Continuing down that path, we have been flying somewhat blind, in full transparency, as far as how much we should and should not be spending. We're just kind of using our own discretion, working with our department heads to determine whether we truly need to purchase something or not. And we aren't having any large expenses really at all, whether it's equipment, whether it's a capital improvement, whatever it may be. So that saves us a ton of money. But again, most of those things are just deferred costs. For example, we have a couple of pieces of equipment. We have a workman that has a little over 4,000 hours. That's pretty much its service life. So that thing should have been replaced last March, but we didn't spend that money, and we still have to replace that. So that's not a ton of money, but that's it's a few $1,000s here and there that adds up. That's not a cheap item. So those kinds of things, it's been understood that stuff, again, it's deferred. I don't have a lot of fear that we're going to get the standard, well, you may do with less, so you're going to continue to do without less, kind of mentality. But there is going to be some lasting effects of this budget shortfall. Things are going to be tight here for a few years. Because of the way that we are operating, we kind of robbed from Peter to pay Paul, if you will. We took out a line of credit from Old Main, so University proper is helping us get by while we are awaiting some of our TV revenue from the conference. We deferred, or excuse me, we rolled over season ticket payments and donations from the NLC from the 2020 season. So that means that the money that people paid for their season tickets in 2020 that they didn't get to use went towards their 2021 season tickets. So that means that this year we don't have the income coming in from all of those season tickets. We'll have to rely upon new season ticket holder sales in order to get that revenue up. So long story short, we're going to have a reduced budget for a number of years. But I don't necessarily believe that will mean that, we're going to be tasked to maintain operating at 60% of our budget. As one of the things that in our budget proposal yesterday that we made, we're shooting for more than, as I would advise you to do. You want to ask for a little bit more than what you need, because you may not get what you ask for. So we asked for about the same number that we did last year, but we ran the numbers of what's realistic, and what we're going to ask in our formal presentation is slightly less than our usual budget, but it's somewhere in between that 60% number, like I said, that we operated on in 2019 to 2020, and what our normal budget is. So, we're trying to show that we're doing our part, but we also have to make it known that some of those things are you're just kicking the can down the road on some of those capital expenses. Kyle, you got anybody else? A little long-winded here, so I apologize.
No worries. If anybody wants to speak now, please do.
Yeah, I just have a
Um,
quick one.
Yeah.
How do you get how do you get involved helping out at the fields and such?
Well, I just threw up my email and my phone number there. Take that down. You can reach out to myself or Thomas Going. That's my cell phone number. So give me a call, shoot me a text. Right now, unsure of what our hiring is going to look like for the year, but always looking for applicants. So if you're interested, please reach out. Would love to talk to anybody that's interested. And if we're not able to get you what you're looking for, maybe we can send you in the right direction, whether it be the Penn State golf courses or the State College Spikes. There's plenty of opportunities that we can help you out with, and would love to, as Kyle knows, Nate knows, love to see some new faces around the shop, and would love to have some more help out there.
Thank you.
Working for the grounds crew has been a lot of fun, and having 2 seasons to be able to do that, and working with Nate and George, it's been a lot of fun. Great family and group of guys. So I can't say enough about it. And George, I know just as far as summer work, I know it's kind of out there, but I believe you guys did offer in a normal year possible summer internships. I just didn't know if you wanted to speak about that.
Yeah, so unsure of what will be like this year. So not to get too long-winded, but because of the contract with the university, if there's people laid off in other work units, we can't work our students the way that we normally do. But in a normal year, yes, we do have. We actually have started here recently doing 2 internships concurrently. So, traditionally, the internship that has been done here for a number of years, the project revolves around the intramural fields. So, largely tasked with being involved in the renovation of those fields. So the spring aerification and coming out of the Moving On concert that is now hosted on them. But we in 2019 we had our first go round with a new internship where it was kind of the next level to where we try to give an intern a little bit more of the reins. So we pretty much handed the softball facility over to Devin, our intern, and kind of tried to treat him a little bit more like he was in management, if you will. So he had to come up with a weekly plan. He had to defend and ask for why he needed help from other people down there. He had to take a week off throughout the summer for a vacation, and he had to come up with a plan for what needed to be done while he was gone, and then evaluated that work whenever he came back. We put him in situations to where he had to manage whether they were full-time employees or whether they were fellow students. So whenever they were working with him, he had to manage them the way that Thomas or I would manage an employee. So a little bit of a unique experience there. If those are internships that you're interested in, again, please reach out. I'm hopeful that we can get back to those.
Awesome. With that being said, George, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to talk to the Turf Club. That was an awesome presentation and a lot of good information for all of our Nittany Lions. So again, thank you, and thank you for everybody being here and participating. Like I said, this club is run by all of us, so your participation is what keeps it going. With that being said, I will stop the recording.